Watch this.
These are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted.
That's a lot of things Robert Kennedy Jr. thinks people with autism can't do. But apparently he thinks he can come up with the cause of it. The kind of thinking a Boise mom and autism coach worries can be dangerous. Twin Falls School District is making some changes for next school year with a budgetary balancing act that has some teachers packing while others are cashing in.
We wanted to go to Canyon County, and we thought, what better, quieter place?
The noise of the legislative session may be in our rear view, but for the first time since it ended, Governor Brad Little is breaking his silence on how it went. Of all the things that have been said by President Donald Trump and his administration since they returned to office in January, from annexing Canada to renaming the Gulf of Mexico to occupying Greenland, perhaps the goal that has gotten its fair share of attention is what was said by Secretary of Health and Human Services. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said he plans to identify the cause of autism by September. That announcement followed his support for a controversial study, one that's reignited decades-old fears and theories, some long debunked, others still being debated. And as Hunter Funk explains, it has left many in the autistic community and their families feeling, well, unsettled.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack.
This is Karen Casso.
I myself am a neurospicy mom of 2 autistic kids who are going to be 15 and 11 later this year. And I've been involved in the local autism parent community for at least the last decade since we got our first diagnoses.
She lives it, teaches it, and coaches other parents through it. When she heard RFK Jr. launched a national autism registry and claims he'll identify the environmental causes of autism, she didn't hear hope, but rather a warning sign.
There's a multifactorial approach, I think, to what causes autism, and it's going to be very difficult to ever figure out completely what that causes.
She says it's not wrong to want to understand autism better, but it overlooks the urgent needs, like more support, and it frames autism as a problem to be solved.
We're doing the best we can with what we have, trying to navigate life in a society that just isn't really set up to support our families.
Not only that, but Casso says the idea of a national autism registry...
It's terrifying. As someone who has relied on the Katie Beckett program for the better part of a decade, now it feels like that information that they have from all of the assessments that my kids went through, I'm afraid it's going to be used against us.
U.S. Department of Health and Human Services announced plans to develop the platform using Medicare and Medicaid records to investigate the root causes of autism, while the administration insists this is a real-world data platform and not a registry.
There are
many remain skeptical.
Ways that we can do research, there are ways that we can study things that remove that private health information so it is anonymous, so that people are getting the information they need to support the community and the population without being able to say, this person at this address has this diagnosis, these are their medical records.
Casso says, in a moment when families are feeling unheard and overwhelmed.
No one I know is okay. What I think we all need is support so that we don't feel so alone, because I think everyone is feeling very alone and very scared.
And with roughly 36% of Americans enrolled in Medicare or Medicaid, this research platform could potentially include sensitive health information from a large portion of the U.S. population.
It's hard to find anybody out there who took this statement by RFK Jr. that he's going to find a cause to it in September. By September. I mean, who took that seriously?
I think most people think it's an overreach, but also, not realistic. There's so many factors that go into this.
Right.
It was hard to comprehend.
And different variations. I mean, the reason we're seeing it more is it's only been recently, in the grand scheme of things, something that's been able to be diagnosed a certain way.
Yes.
So that's why it's kind of showing up a lot more than we used to.
Correct. And also mentioning people are born with it. So what environmental factors? Was it the mother? There's a lot of questions.
That's exactly. All right. Thank you very much, Hunter. Well, the Twin Falls School District is making some significant changes for the upcoming school year, including staff reductions and teacher pay raises. A move that might seem contradictory, right? But there's a little bit more to this story. And Aspen, you spoke to the district today. So I guess the question is, how can these two things be happening at the same time?
Yep, happening at the same time, but the district really says happening for two completely unrelated reasons. The district cut 20 teaching positions for next year. This comes after 3 consecutive years of declining enrollment, with the district losing about 2% of its students each year. Superintendent Brady Dickinson says this decline is due to several factors.
Here in Twin Falls, we're on what's called the career ladder. And so it matches exactly with what the state has. In some districts, they might have different salary grids, and it might take different amounts to utilize the funds that are provided from the state.
Dickinson says most teaching positions will be reduced through attrition, staff who are retiring, relocating, or making other career changes. He emphasizes these cuts shouldn't impact classroom sizes because the district is essentially right-sizing itself to align staffing with current enrollment numbers. Despite these staff cuts, Twin Falls teachers are getting a 5% raise next year. This comes after Idaho lawmakers approved an increase for public school teachers this past session. But Dickinson says how much teachers in each district will vary.
In terms of why we're seeing that loss of enrollment has to do with smaller incoming kindergarten classes. Some of that would be because of additional charter school options for parents, some homeschooling, and then also lower birth rates that we've seen over the years.
Dickinson says negotiations in the Twin Falls School District have wrapped up, and every Twin Falls teacher will see that full 5% raise. This highlights the balance act that districts play with factors like enrollment and funding formulas. That is always changing. And in this case, Brian, yes, 2 changes are happening at the same time, but again, not related to each other.
I guess if you have fewer teachers to pay, you can kind of spread that money out a little bit.
Yep, exactly.
More. But when it comes to the enrollment stuff, that's how they base their budgets when it comes to school districts. So fewer students means they're going to get less money to play with.
Yep, that's right.
And so I guess when it comes to the new bill or the new law about expanding the tax credit or including a tax credit, we're going to get to that in just a second. But it's all kind of wrapped up together.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks. All right, Aspen. Now, speaking about that, or about the tax credit.
When I delivered my State of the State back in January, I told people that we would keep our promises and deliver on those promises.
And one of those he promised was to give $50 million to a tax credit to open up school choice across Idaho. Governor Brad Little delivering a recap of those promises made, promises kept, from the driveway of his chief of staff's childhood home in Nampa. But as Zach Haug's mom told assembled reporters, the lane they live on is more like a busy byway these days. So apologies ahead of time for the planes and trucks soundtrack of the 2025 post-legislative press conference. The governor spoke for about 4 minutes this afternoon before taking questions from reporters, recalling the accomplishments of the session. That would be a balanced budget, which is required by the state constitution. He mentioned Medicaid cost containment, Idaho infrastructure, saying the state's going to bond for an additional $1 billion in road projects across the state. Governor Little, though, wanted to focus and narrow his focus today to tax cuts and public schools. He pointed to increased funding for rural public schools to the tune of $50 million, an $85 million increase in teacher pay that Aspen kind of touched on, and $78 million investment to make sure Idaho kids can read proficiently by the 3rd grade. Then there were the more than $400 million in tax relief for Idahoans, from income tax to property tax to adjusting the grocery tax. And then, of course, the $50 million tax credit for families paying for private school or homeschool, where tax cuts and school funding those are where those kind of things come together, right? Tax cuts and school funding. House Bill 93 offers homeschool or private school families up to $5,000 per student in tax credits, $7,500 for kids with special needs. The bill capped that credit at $50 million and prioritizes those families making less than 300% of the federal poverty level, which for a family of 4 right now is less than $96,450. Well, just before the end of the session, Governor Little told reporters the only thing he liked about that bill, he really agreed with, was the price of it, the $50 million. A lack of accountability for private schools or homeschool families taking state money was the biggest issue, though, many had with that bill. Yet Governor Little signed it into law. And today, for the first time, he justified giving it his signature.
There was negotiations all along. At one point in time, there was very little review of how the money was spent. I think there was like 1 position over the tax commission. We got that moved up to 6. The other thing is we capped it. The other part of it was we means tested it. There's a certain level, if you have income over a certain level, you won't qualify. And then we overweighted it for disadvantaged students. Those were all components of what I asked for. I would have done it a little differently, but literally everything I get from the legislature, I would have done a little differently. That's part of our constitutional process.
And yes, no bill is perfect, we know this, but this one had big questions from the beginning, from that lack of accountability to the funding, which many critics point out will end up taking money away from public schools, i.e. that lack of attendance. And not qualifying because families make too much, that isn't exactly accurate. While low income is the priority, it opens up to anyone after that. And that funding has even hit a couple of bumps along the road. What was supposed to be just a one-time cost of $125,000 to get the application process up and running and require just 2 full-time employees at the Tax Commission has ballooned to 7 Tax Commission full-time employees and a cost of $670,000 to pay for that, which would drop tax credit availability accordingly. So not necessarily $50 million, but about $49.3 million. So there's no such thing as a perfect bill, even when it comes to what it will ultimately cost the state.
A piece of legislation that looks good today, all of a sudden you look at it in 2 or 3 years and says that's cost us a lot more money than we anticipated.
Well, critics can say that about the school choice tax credit bill, or maybe even a bill without an anticipated fiscal impact, like the flag law, which restricts what flags can fly on government property. It's become a bit of a legal boondoggle for law enforcement, costing time and money to try to enforce, and something Governor Little says we aren't done with yet.
I supported it, I signed it. I was aware that it didn't have any kind of a penalty in it. I'm quite certain it's going to come back next year.
So how do you think it's playing out now? You think it's going to have to be settled in the legislature?
Oh, yeah.
Or if not in a court of law prior to that. Well, it wasn't an accomplishment because the bill to create an Idaho version of DOGE did fail this past session. About a week after they went home for the year, Idaho GOP leaders announced they were going to start their own Department of Government Efficiency Task Force, a joint task force set on streamlining Idaho's government spending by focusing on consolidating state agencies when they can, reducing unnecessary employee travel, and just cutting jobs altogether. Something the task force claims hasn't been done since 1974 under then Governor Cecil Andrus. Well, today's Governor, Brad Little, said there's nothing wrong with looking in a mirror once every few decades.
You know, my first reaction is, as a Republican, we've been in charge for 30 years. If we're inefficient, it's our fault. You can always get to be more efficient. And that is a constant process.
And that process, or at least the cut, seemed pretty constant for the first couple of months of Trump's second go at it this time around. Several of those DOGE gashes trickling down to the Gem State through Forest Service employees, nonprofit grants, agencies that help combat homelessness, poverty, even the Idaho Humanities Council and Veterans Affairs feeling it. But Governor Brad Little, who reiterated he's all in for cutting fat, had this to say about the federal cuts coming to Idaho.
I haven't seen anything that rises to the magnitude that is something that we need to be urgently concerned about. But I can tell you that most people in Idaho agree that the federal government spends too much money, and if we think we're going to be totally immune to it, I understand, obviously, the administration and Congress we need to dial back spending and get this federal deficit under control.
So that was kind of how it all played out this afternoon, or this morning actually, on that driveway. Governor Little did mention his $75 million launch program at least 4 times during this press conference, calling it the defining piece of this legislative session at one point, and at the same time, a top priority going into next session. This is the program that pays for post-secondary education for Idaho high school graduates to learn a trade. Governor Little says he wanted to expand that capacity to 15,000 awards this past session, but he only got 10, so he's going to try it again next session. Wait, hold on. Just because we're going to break doesn't mean it's time for you to take a break. Now is the time for you to join the 208 conversation. We want your comments, your questions, and sometimes your concerns. Send them to the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. As always, include your name and the hashtag the208, and you might see yours at the end of the show. Well, we know the warmer weather the past few days and what could be coming here shortly makes it tempting to get into the water. That recreation usually comes with a bit of a risk. A good reminder, right now, not the ideal time to float the Boise River. Aspen Shumpert shows us why in today's 411.
The Idaho County Sheriff's Office said 2 rafters died on the Selway River Saturday. An SOS signal was sent out from a personal GPS tracker saying they were performing CPR at an area not accessible by car. A second ping 2 miles downstream confirmed that a second person from the same group also flipped into the water and needed CPR. Sadly, Lifelight responded and said both of the rafters had died. They weren't able to get the bodies until the next day because of the difficult terrain. A Boise fire rescue boat flipped over yesterday during a training exercise on the Boise River. A local towing company helped recover the boat. Now the department is assessing any damage so they can get it back in service. Boise Fire says thankfully no one was hurt. If a Boise fireboat flipped, yours might too, which is one of the reasons why officials are saying it's still too dangerous to float the Boise River. Water managers are closely watching runoff and river flows. Then once water levels drop, Boise Fire will remove hazards from the river. Floating is always at your own risk, but for official updates, visit floattheboise.org or follow Float the Boise on social media. Heads up, starting today, Boise County Road and Bridge Department is closing Banks-Loman Road for construction from east of Garden Valley to Loman. The road will be closed for road work on weekdays Monday through Thursday from 8 to 5 with an hour open for travel at noon. Boise County says weekend travel will not be impacted. The closure is expected to last until the end of May. Exciting news for Boise State fans. The Broncos' highly anticipated game this October against Notre Dame will be on NBC, which means it'll be right here on Channel 7. You can watch it October 4th at 1:30 p.m. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Aspen Shumpert.
love seeing Idaho in bloom. So stunning. And hey, if you're wondering where our sneak peek of summer from over the weekend has gone, look no further than Bismarck, North Dakota. All of the heat has shifted east. Bismarck has been as hot as 96 degrees today, shattering a daily high temp record for May 12th, sitting at 95 currently. One of the hottest places, at least on this map, across the country. Look at Miami sitting at 77, Houston at 83. The only place hotter on this map is Phoenix, Arizona at 100 degrees on this Monday afternoon. What a contrast to our crisp 64 in Boise right now. And looking at tomorrow, the heat retreats a bit as we have that cooler air starting to work in from the west, but still 90 degrees in Bismarck, even hotter down in South Texas, mid 90s in places like Dallas and Houston. So if you already missed a summer-like heat, you might need to hit the road or hit the friendly skies. That is long gone for us. I'm not seeing any more readings in the 80s, really even in the 70s for the rest of the week, and likely another 10 to 14 days before we start seeing much warmer conditions. Here's what's bringing us our cool, cloudy, breezy, generally unsettled weather today. There's an area of low pressure that is spinning its wheels right over Oregon at this moment. So we're on the eastern flank of this system. So we have the jet stream that is riding up and over the Gem State. That is bringing a lot of lift and dynamics to the atmosphere, a lot of moisture coming in as well. So we have seen some stray showers out there throughout the afternoon. We have many more to come as this area of low pressure will very slowly meander eastward. It takes until about Wednesday for that system to fully exit the area. The axis will be right overhead tomorrow, so that will really boost our precipitation and even storm chances on Tuesday. For today, we are seeing some light rain and even very high elevation snow in our central mountains. The Owyhee's picking up some rain right now as well, likely looking pretty stormy if you look off to the south. Not much happening across the Treasure Valley or the Magic Valley. Will likely stay pretty quiet as far as precipitation goes for the evening, but those brisk blustery winds will continue to be a nuisance through the evening and in fact for the next couple of days. So you can see looking out towards the Boise Mountains from Boise, pretty overcast, stormy looking sky there at 64 in Boise, 64 in Twin Falls, and blue sky over Payette Lake and McCall in the upper 50s. Sun Valley sitting at 63 degrees right now. So again, for the rest of your evening, a spot shower or two possible. Those shower chances increase across the Treasure Valley tomorrow. Not a washout of a day, but just pack the hooded jacket along if you're headed out. Be ready for a couple of stray storms if the sunshine breaks through in the afternoon. Tomorrow is our coolest day of the extended period. Not by much. We'll only hit the mid 60s. Those morning lows in the 40s. So definitely sweater weather has made a return. Thursday, we have more sunshine coming in. Those precipitation chances, though, ramp right back up over the weekend, especially Saturday evening. And hey, remember, if you ever want a more extended look at your weather forecast, you can catch First Alert Weather Plus on KTVB Plus that you can download on your TV and watch for free.
Our final moments here. Jack in Boise says Governor Little was nothing but a rubber stamp for the extreme right this session. Just one veto, which was then redone, and then it passed, the Medical Freedom Act. So it really wasn't a veto after all. They just kind of changed it a little bit. Did Governor Little explain why he ignored the voice of the majority of his constituents who opposed private school vouchers? Yes, Carol. He said that right before he signed the bill, saying this is why we have a representative government and not a democracy. This one says, I didn't hear anything positive in your report on trying to find the cause of autism. I, for one, think it's great. They're trying to find the cause. It would be nice in the future if you'd give some credit to the current administration instead of presenting such issues, always from a negative perspective. Well, Bobby, the problem is there really isn't a single cause to this. It's genetic and it's environmental. Dozens of possibilities for the cause of autism, from everything from the age of the parents to the birth weight, birthing complications, all that kind of stuff. So to say that they're going to find the cause by September, Brian says you might as well find the cure for cancer by September as well. Good luck with that.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.